Now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 7:06. It's O'Connor and Company here on this Wednesday morning. 1 week from now, we might be going over the results of last night's election. And actually, I know it sounds weird these days, but we might actually know who won the election. I know. It's a pipe dream. But we are all locked in and ready to go over the next 6 days until that moment. At 7:35, Mike Van Meter running for Congress in the 11th District of Virginia. And then at 8:35, Jerry Torres doing the same in the 8th District. It's Larry O'Connor. That there is Julie Gunlock. Good morning, Julie.
Good morning.
And joining us right now is Mark Hemingway. He's book editor at The Federalist, investigative journalist, and just a bon vivant, if I may say. Mark, good morning. Good to talk with you, my friend.
Hey, glad to be on.
Bon vivant. You heard me. Go ahead. Look it up. Mark, I want to get your opinion on what happened last night, this extraordinary moment in this extraordinary campaign with Kamala's closing arguments being upstaged by her boss, Joe, calling every Trump supporter a piece of garbage. But first, before we get to that, this expose that you're doing here on how big tech is very much involved in influencing the ongoing dialogue online about this campaign. It's extraordinary. We saw the blatant thumb on the scale 4 years ago with the censoring of the Hunter Biden laptop story, and it was obvious what was going on there. And we've learned now that the FBI was telling social media companies to delete accounts and delete any references to the story, and it was directed by the government. But what you're detailing here in the first part of this series, it's actually a little bit more insidious. Explain for everybody what exactly the Harris campaign is doing with regard to Reddit.
Yeah. So this guy reached out to me who was well known on the internet, let's just put it that way, and he had discovered that there is a Discord server, which is Discord is a sort of a popular application that allows people to sort of coordinate their own communities and message boards and stuff like that. And the Harris Walz campaign has set up their own server where they corral all these volunteers and they tell them what to do in order to flood online platforms with propaganda. So, like in the case of Reddit, which is this internet message board where people vote up and down on stories. It's got like 500 million members. They have just been flooding it with like pro-Harris propaganda, and quite successfully. So, like the politics forum on Reddit, 1 out of every 8 stories over the last month has been Harris Walz campaign propaganda planted there by Harris Walz campaign volunteers. And they're doing this just across the site. And they're doing this in violation of the terms and service of the website. They're doing all sorts of specific things to get around bans if you post too often. They have it down to a science, and it's totally coordinated. And so much of what you're reading on that website is complete propaganda right now that is being planted there.
You said that, this is against Reddit's terms of service, against the rules. How is Reddit? I mean, we know Google is totally left-leaning. We know most tech companies, thank God for X, but most tech companies do lean left. I mean, if you do a Google search of, a Trump event, you get Kamala results. Is Reddit sort of allowing this to happen? Are they not enforcing their terms of service?
Yeah, there's no enforcement that's really happening. So of all of the sort of major platforms, almost none is more explicitly left-wing than Reddit. And more than that, how Reddit works is there are different, message boards. So like there's a politics message board. There's a message board devoted to funny pictures or whatever. And each one of those platforms, like the politics message board has 8 million members alone. And those are run by moderators that come from within the Reddit community, and all of the left-wingers have just completely taken over the site. So yesterday, I'm not making this up, when our story dropped about Reddit being flooded with campaign propaganda, Reddit's politics message board was banning people who were trying to put that story up, saying their platform was being flooded with propaganda, because that's how left-wing they are.
Wow.
Now,
yeah.
Listen, I don't do a lot on Reddit, but I know some people who do, and also who are very into their Discord servers and stuff. And it's mostly, ironically, the demographic that Kamala Harris has been most concerned about: young men, gamers, sort of this 20-something and early 30s groups. And one thing that they all have in common is they're all pretty smart, they're savvy, and they're also rather cynical. And I've got to think that even if this is happening, Mark, a lot of these guys, they see right through it. They see it for what it is, don't they?
Oh, they have to, because, if you just glance at the message board for 2 seconds, you see it's nothing but pro-Harris Walz stuff. I mean, it's just really, really crazy. But I wanted to mention we got another part 2 of this expose is dropping today. And you obviously, like I said, this is not being limited to Reddit. So one of the things that they're doing is that they are flooding X as well. And I don't know if you've noticed, but even CNN's fact checker has written an entire column criticizing Kamala Harris for putting out all kinds of disinformation, frankly, saying things that Trump said that aren't true, that are taken wildly out of context and all stuff. And the campaign's really been called out on this, but it hasn't been called out on X because the community notes feature that they use to label things false or misleading is also being brigaded or swarmed by Harris volunteers that they can put out stuff that's untrue, and then they vote it down so no community notes get appended to it.
Oh, well, we're looking forward to seeing that. That'll break at Federalist today, an expose from a bon vivant, and this is getting way too French, Mark. So let's move back to American politics. Listen, there are a handful of people that I track on a regular basis on X, on Twitter. Mark is one of them, and last night was no exception as Kamala Harris's huge speech at the Ellipse, her closing arguments with all that stagecraft and all the planning and all the money, it was completely upstaged with this little 10-second clip.
Or Puerto Rico, where I'm in my home state of Delaware, they're good, decent, honorable people. The only garbage I see floating out there is just supporters.
Mark, I'm told by my superiors in the media and real journalists, they're telling me that there's an apostrophe in there that I'm not hearing. So first of all, explain how they're hearing an apostrophe that I'm not, number one. And number two, I'm still not clear on how that makes this any better, that he was talking about a possessive rather than a plural.
They're making this incredibly elaborate argument that just as a matter of linguistics and common sense is absurd to say that somehow he wasn't talking about Trump supporters writ large. Somehow he was really just talking about the one stand-up comedian, Tony Hinchcliffe, who made the remark about Puerto Ricans on Sunday. It doesn't even begin to pass the smell test. I mean, we have to remember that Joe Biden, long before the man's brain turned to applesauce, was out there regularly saying things that were intemperate and, ill-advised. Remember when he went to the 7-Eleven and said all that stuff about Indians working in mini-marts or whatever?
Yes.
You
or when
have to have an Indian accent. Yes.
Right. Or when Mitt Romney was going to put black people back in chains and stuff. This is entirely in keeping of something that Joe Biden would have said. And for people to try and rationalize that away is absurd, and they don't get to do that.
Well, Mark, libs are seeing apostrophes like Haley Joel Osment sees dead people these days, and I will tell you, you've got it's really interesting to see them sort of defend this apostrophe gate, because they can't. You can tell some people want to say, well, he's cognitively different. He's right. He's a bit, he's applesauce, right? So they can't say that. So they're going full in with the apostrophe. It's absolutely absurd. I think most people see that. Don't you think most people are not being fooled by this?
No, I don't think anybody's going to be fooled by this. But what is, again, appalling is that, it's so much worse than that. Like the initial Politico report was actually called out by J.D. Vance directly on Twitter.
Yes.
You go and look at what Joe Biden said, and you go and look at how they write it up, and it is flat out dishonest and insane. I mean, they had to spend a lot of effort to lie like that. Yeah. And that's what's really shocking. But again, it's not shocking that the media would really, go and do that. I mean, one of the big stories of this election, of course, is the same as it's been the last, 4 or 5 years, is just the, really truly alarming dishonesty of the media, and the fact that they don't see that this is undermining their credibility to a degree that is untenable.
Yes. Listen, if the media suffers a death blow this election, which I believe it has, in fact, Mike Allen and his pal over there at Axios just wrote about it earlier this week, that this is the end of big media. Well, it's a self-inflicted wound. This is suicide. They've done this to themselves. We've watched it happen, and we've called them out. And let me just say, we're 2 hours into our morning show, and we haven't even played any of Kamala Harris's speech last night because Joe Biden has completely upstaged it with that one line. Mark Hemingway, keep up the great work, as always, and we look forward to the rest of this expose.
Thanks,
over
Mark.
at the Federalist. Thanks, Mark. Good talking with you.
Thank you.
It is 7:15. WMAL traffic and
WMAL.
Making sense of the news.
Live
From the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios.
Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
discussed yesterday, we need you all to step back off of this irrational exuberance. The behavior of a lot of people who are rooting for Donald Trump has almost reached the point where they're taking victory laps now a week out. And we need to remind you that this is a neck and neck. If not, Trump is actually behind right now. That's certainly how the campaign is operating. Don't believe the polls, because the polls are often wrong. Yes, they're often wrong in the direction in favor of the Democrat, but you don't know that that's the case this time around. And, oh, by the way, states are still having the final say here as to how ballots are going to be handled, validated, and counted. And we have a slew of stories coming out of these states right now, like in the final days, that should be disconcerting. Let's start with Nevada. Nevada's Supreme Court came down with a ruling yesterday that ballots without a postmark arriving 3 days after Election Day must be counted. Think about that for a minute. A ballot shows up 3 days after Election Day and there's no postmark on it, and the Nevada Supreme Court just ruled that that needs to be a valid ballot to count as a vote.
So essentially that doesn't mean that, okay, if there's a postmark on it and it was delayed in the mail, but it shows that you actually put it in the mail before Election Day. I could kind of see that as being legitimate, but it doesn't even need a postmark. Oy.
Yep. It's horrifying. And by the way, that's not the only story that we saw. You saw these videos, I'm sure, in Pennsylvania, where people standing in line for their ballots to vote early were turned away, illegally turned away, in some cases by law enforcement officials who were acting on the orders of the county election directors, who were saying, oh, there's too many people, we're too overwhelmed. Tell people that they should only be voting early if they have a compelling reason. That's not the law.
That's not true. Right.
There is you can early vote without having to have a reason, and they're sending and it's because I believe, in my opinion, that the numbers are overwhelmingly higher for Republicans now than they have been in the past, and they're trying to tell them, no, go away, because they're hoping that for some reason they can't make it on Election Day. Here's video. Listen to this. Cut 17, as a woman was trying to push back on this.
I have a question. I have to bring someone here about 4 o'clock to vote. Are they gonna?
I'm going to ask you to talk to this.
Are they going to turn everyone down?
I'm going to ask you to talk to this gentleman because the voting is closed right now.
It's closed.
I just want you to talk to this gentleman.
We have the right to vote until 4:30.
I get you.
Why is it closed?
Let me explain it to you.
Please.
Okay. This process is very slow and grueling.
That doesn't matter if we're online.
Very slow and grueling.
Doesn't matter if we're online by 4:30. We have the right to
The reason why it
vote.
had to close was because a high volume of people wanted to do this. Slow and grueling.
Well, then they
So
have to wait till everyone's.
They had to cut the line at 1:45.
All right, listen,
They
it
cut
goes
the line
back
at
and forth. It's
1:40?
outrageous. By the way, the governor of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro, was actually posting on social media all day yesterday, as long as you're in line by 5 p.m., county officials have to let you apply for the vote, and encouraging people to go out there. And meanwhile, this is what's happening on the ground. Also, Democrat operatives were working the line. They had these tags. They looked like sort of backstage passes, all access passes hanging around their neck, and it said voter protection. They were frauds. They were made up. They printed them themselves.
Wow.
They didn't have any official role, and they were working the line, going up and down the line, telling people that if they didn't have to be there to vote and if they could come back, they should come back another day. And those were distributed, it appears, based on what I saw on those tags, from the local Democratic Party. So this is absolute outrageous shenanigans.
They
and
are
one
desperate.
Other thing,
Desperate.
Outrageous, and this is suppression of the vote. This is we're seeing it happen before our very eyes
by the Democrats.
Finally, I mentioned yesterday that the Pennsylvania Supreme Court was going to allow provisional ballots cast on Election Day, even if the ballot wasn't filled out correctly. Right? I mentioned this yesterday. Well, the RNC has now filed an emergency stay.
Good.
For the U.S. Supreme Court, trying to override the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. But this is, listen, please, guys, everyone's got to keep their clear eyes about all of this and needs to be focused on what's happening.
Also, get your cameras out. Film what's happening.
Yes.
Make sure you post it. Send it to the media. Send it to friendly media if you need to. Take your cameras with you. It is really important to document this stuff.
And this stuff is happening exactly where it was happening 4 years ago as well. In Pennsylvania, in Nevada, in Georgia, and, well, we'll keep an eye on Michigan and Wisconsin. It's 7:23.
Now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 7:37. It's O'Connor and Company. Thank you so much for letting us be a part of your morning and letting us ride shotgun with you as you get through your activities and responsibilities. We got plenty ahead here as we continue to analyze President Biden's huge assist that he gave Kamala Harris there by calling every Trump supporter garbage 1 week before Election Day. Man, what a 1-2 punch those two are. Coming up at 8:35, Jerry Torres running for Congress, District 8 in Virginia. It's Larry O'Connor with Julie Gunlock. Julie.
Good morning.
You are a Virginia voter, are you not?
I am a Virginia voter.
And in fact, what your congressional district? I always forget
I'm
which.
Congressional District 8.
Okay, well then you'll have many questions for young Jerry Torres coming up here. Right now, we've got Mike Van Meter. He is running for Congressional District 11, which I believe is right next door to Congressional District 8 in Northern Virginia. And Mike, what a journey it's been. Here you are in the final days before Election Day. What's it been like for you to run for this seat?
Well, running for office is something not to take lightly. That's for sure. It is a daily grind, but it's worth it.
Wait,
It's
hold
worth
on.
it.
You used to fly helicopters for the Navy, and you're saying this running for office thing. Now that's what you got to look out for.
Yeah, no. I guess my point is that it's not for everybody to do. It's not for everybody to do. But I love it. I'm excited about it, and I'm looking forward to serving everyone in the 11th. It's time. I can feel the excitement. There's a lot of excitement out at the polls right now.
You know, Mike, I'm so glad that you are running, and you're running against Representative Jerry Connolly, who is a longtime member of the House. As a parent who went through COVID and who was really frustrated, not just from the mask mandates and the school closures, but also the fact that parents were treated so abysmally. And Rep. Jerry Connolly did nothing during the shutdowns, which we know in Northern Virginia, it was some of the worst shutdowns and mask requirements. He did nothing for parents. How would you change that? What relationship do you have with parents, and how do you view parents in terms of the public schools, their role, and the rights they have as being the best arbiters for their children's education?
Oh, that's something that is at the forefront of what the voters want here in the 11th. And not only did he not do anything, but he actually championed much of that.
Yes.
You have to understand, Jerry Connolly champions all of the left-wing progressive agenda. In fact, the latest is, you've obviously in the story, or the top of the headlines now, is this fight that Governor Youngkin is in regarding the voters that are not citizens on the voting roster, and he, meaning Jerry Connolly, actually has been supporting taking or bringing these voters back on. He champions all these issues.
I'm shocked, disappointed, yet sadly not surprised that Jerry Connolly is so arrogant in his position as congressman for life in the 11th that he refused to even debate you. Were there even conversations or negotiations? What happened here? Why does he have such disdain and disrespect for the people of his district that he won't even offer to debate his opponent?
Listen, it goes beyond not debating me. And by the way, it's not just me. Every Republican candidate that has gone before me, he has refused to debate. And I'm going to share with you a little story. He came to the American Legion at one point to talk to them. And I showed up only because we knew about the event. And he was talking to predominantly Vietnam veterans at this particular function. And he gave a speech, and they were going to have a question and answer period for him. And instead of getting up and answering questions, he left the building. He didn't even answer the questions of the vets.
Wow.
He doesn't think that he needs to answer anything. He's a congressman for life, and he doesn't think he is accountable to the people. He's going to walk into this. And I'm going to tell you guys something. This is going to be a shock on Tuesday when I win. He does not see this coming.
Well, listen, make your final argument to those voters then, because this is your last chance. I know that there are a lot of people in our listening area who, listen, they're all excited about the presidential election, I know. And it's strangely, and I always don't quite understand this, people show up, they'll vote for president, maybe they'll vote for Senate, and then they walk away and they don't even look at the downtime. It's ridiculous. Frankly, the member of the House of Representatives has more direct impact on voters' lives than the person who's sitting in the Oval Office. So explain to everybody, especially in Fairfax County, how you represent this change and how it is time to tell Jerry Connolly that taking the voters for granted is a thing of the past.
It is. And I'll tell you, this is the most consequential election of my lifetime. I know we say that about every election, but this one really is. It's a stark contrast. Kamala Harris is absolutely not equipped or prepared to be in this office. Donald Trump is. We saw that in the 4 years he was in. But Donald Trump, listen, we are going to have to give him a House and a Senate, because if we don't, from day one, they are going to cripple him. He's going to be under investigation. He's going to be impeached. We saw this before. They're going to do it again. And we have to give him a House and a Senate. It is vital. Vote, go down ticket. And if anybody listening to my voice right now has not voted, what are you waiting for? Get in, vote now, vote early, get out, get everyone that you know out there, because we need to take our government back. The survival of this nation depends on it, and that's absolutely not an overstatement. So get out and vote, guys, Tuesday.
VanMeterForVirginia.com, VanMeterForVirginia.com, U.S. Navy officer, helicopter pilot, FBI veteran, and now he wants to be your representative for the 11th District of Virginia. Mike, it's been great meeting you during this, and I hope to talk to you right after the election so we can talk about your plans for your first term in Congress.
Good luck.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Breaking news and the inside story.
News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
Making sense of the news.
Okay, here's my Mr. Vance. How about you mind your own business? Okay, you don't have to put your glasses on, but try with me in your teacher voice. Mr. Vance, how about you mind your own business? Yes!
One of the worst parts of this entire campaign, and there are a lot of low points of this presidential campaign, but one of the worst is having to watch Gwen Walz, the wife of Tim Walz, on the campaign trail with these cringy, I'm an educator moments, where she does this and she puts her glasses on and she does this whole thing where you know, she acts like she's a school teacher and she talks to us all like we're 5-year-olds, right?
Gives people homework, yeah.
Right. And you saw these stories last week that she's been pulled off the campaign trail. They actually got so bad. Even the inept Kamala Harris for president campaign realized, oh, no, she's not helping. And it's so funny that they called J.D. Vance. Remember, first thing Tim Walz, his big claim to fame was J.D. Vance is weird. Yeah. And then we got to meet the Walzes. So now here's the latest. The latest thing is, instead of being out and being cringe on the campaign trail, they've got her in a kitchen baking a cake, I guess, or something.
So feminist, so progressive. Stick her in the kitchen to make.
She's a
make
trad
cookies.
wife, really, at heart.
Yes,
she's just
exactly.
one of those trad wives. She's got her apron on. She's got her signature little reading glasses on her nose. I don't know why you need those to make a cake. But then in the middle of this sort of, you know, cooking show thing that she's doing. By the way, did you look at the kitchen? The kitchen looks like it's, you know, this is like a 1-bedroom apartment, or maybe, you know,
or one of those longer stay hotels.
Yes, it could very well be a Residence Inn for all we know, right? Meanwhile, and so it's supposed to be, look, it's just me in my kitchen. She lives in the governor's mansion.
Yeah, that's not her kitchen.
She literally lives in a mansion. That is not her kitchen, okay?
Yeah.
So anyway, but then in the middle of this whole thing where she's just sort of riffing and she's baking a cake and she's being so genuine, she says this. Michael, play this for us.
There is a hand mixer, and I usually just throw that in my suitcase. You never know when you're going to need a good mixer.
Now, Julie, I need you to explain this to me. You're a trad wife. You're a happy homemaker. You're a mother. You're a great cook. You're a foodie. You bake things.
Yeah.
Why in the hell do you need to throw a hand mixer in your suitcase when you're on the road?
Because she's crazy. Okay, she's crazy. Honestly, there's no other explanation. She's nuts, and you do not have. You know, it's funny. My husband made fun of me once because he found a wine opener in our suitcase.
That makes sense.
Well, that makes sense.
You always
of
travel
course,
with a
right?
corkscrew, yeah.
Yeah, but he made fun of me for having. That is the only piece of kitchen equipment I've ever traveled with. You do not need a hand mixer. You should not be baking while you're traveling. It's weird.
She is a lunatic.
She's a
an
lunatic.
Absolute lunatic. And the fact that they let that, was this live or did they actually deliberately allow this to slip through the video?
I don't know. I don't know who is managing her. But again, this all goes back to when most of your staff quits. And I suspect, the Walz staff is the Kamala staff. And we know that the high turnover, they are left with these people who have no judgment. I'm sure she thought this was charming. I'm sure she thought this was funny. This isn't funny. It's weird.
It's weird. It's just odd. Can we hear it one more time? Because again, it's inexplicable.
There is a hand mixer, and I usually just throw that in my suitcase. You never know when you're going to need a good mixer.
We really need to bring back the institutions. She needs to be institutionalized, honestly. Straight jacket, straight in a padded room.
I hate to tell you this, Julie, but I read the comments sometimes on social media to my great fearful disdain sometimes that I do this.
Yeah.
Because, people's minds are in the gutter. Sadly, not mine. My mind.
Don't do it, Larry. Don't do it, Larry.
Well, no, I'm not
going
to be explicit, but I'm just going to say that a lot of people were suggesting.
Don't say it.
That this is some sort of weird kinky thing that she does with her husband. Well, her husband's strange. We've already heard his exploits.
Let's turn the page.
The story yesterday is that he had an affair with some communist Chinese girl, a female, by the way. I just want to make sure everybody knows that. When he's not hanging around.
Which was the real October surprise.
That's kind of shocking about that. And then, there's people like, well, the Kamala Harris campaign is seen as being too urbane, too, college educated and, millennial and Gen X. And she's trying to appeal to older sort of boomer sort of voters.
Yeah.
So she's doing the whole Betty Crocker thing.